Welcome to the Restoration Group podcast, where we're sometimes silly, sometimes in a fog, but we are always serious about investing in Oklahoma City leaders who desire to integrate their Christian faith into the business. I am your host, Clay Steves, and today I am joined by both of my co-hosts, Michael Mead and Aaron Scott. Quick confession that I have to tell both of you. I am consistently terrified during the intro that I am going to combine your names and talk about my co-host, Michael Scott.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
I got to tell you every single time. I'm like, say their name. You know their name. You know their name. Like every episode, I am terrified of that.
Never crossed my mind.
Same. Ever. But I love
But
it.
how fun is that?
I love it.
Okay.
And now it's great to know that you've been living in that
Oh
fear
my
for
gosh. Every
a long
open.
time now.
Every open. Yep.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Good. Just letting you in.
I bet you do it next time.
It's possible. Tune back in. You'll find out. It will happen. It will happen. So today's episode is actually the conclusion of a little series we've done, because we are talking about our final principle, the 8th principle. I guess we shouldn't put numbers on them. I'll just say it's the last one we're talking about.
I'll
but
edit that out.
It's right. It's not less important. It's just as important as the other principles. And today we are talking about the principle of character over talent. Character over talent. And I'm going to begin with this. Michael, just real quick, does this mean talent doesn't matter?
No.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Yes.
Wait, no, Aaron.
You said Michael, my fault.
It does. It does not mean that, because clearly talent does matter. Like, we're in a business setting. We talk about the kind of the Venn diagram of performance and dignity both matter, because we're a business, right? We do have to care about performance. But what we were saying is that character matters more than talent. And I'm also about to break every marketing rule there is, because you're supposed to come with like clean, clear answers. Because, you know, if you're the authority and you're talking on something, you're supposed to always have just a
Obviously, you should be
clean,
the
clear
expert.
answer. Right, 100% all the time. And instead, I'm just going to kind of talk through a little bit of a messy definition, and we're going to do it together. Cool?
Great.
We good with that, Michael?
Sounds complicated, but I'm in.
Okay, so right, we're talking about Christian, integrating our Christian faith. In Christian circles, I often hear the phrase about character, right? That it's who you are when nobody's looking, right? It's who you are when nobody's looking. Yes and no. What'd you say? You've never heard that? Please
No,
say
I
you've
have.
never
I
heard
said
that.
I don't like it.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I was
okay.
just expressing to Michael.
I
that,
thought
like,
you were saying you'd never heard it, right? I don't like it because I think there's an element in character that is about knowing who you are, and when you fall short, because we're human beings and broken and we fall short, is that how you respond to falling short. So when you are,
I want to clap.
You
But I
wanna
don't know how
clap?
that goes audio-wise.
if you were going to clap for me and my answer, okay, never mind.
I appreciate that definition more than the prior.
Thank you, Michael.
You're doing great.
What? Feeling affirmed in this episode, Michael Scott. Great job. So then I also went to Webster as I was trying to sift and prepare for this in the dictionary front. And it talked about the mental and moral qualities distinctive to an individual. And I'm like, yes. And also, again, I would say how someone responds when they fall short of, right, the moral or mental qualities that are distinctive to an individual. So that's how I'm defining character when we're talking about character over talent. Okay.
I would just like to give my 2 cents on why I appreciate this so much.
Please.
Not that you asked, but
Aaron, would you please give me your 2 cents?
I just appreciate that because I think the, kind of Christian circles definition and even the dictionary definition that you mentioned, what they do is set the standard at perfection, that your character is only good when it's perfect, and that anything shy of that, which is literally every human, is a character flaw, is a character miss, is poor character, whatever. And so I appreciate that instead of a binary, like you're perfect or you're not, you have good character or not, that it's more of the messy. Wow!
Whoa, what a catch! If you are not watching on the video, I'm telling you, you are missing out. Like, go get on YouTube, because she just whacked her microphone and then caught it with the other hand.
Ooh, that was so good.
I don't even know what you're talking about, but it was a good point. Like, you were passionate.
Just that you were talking about the what he was describing sounded messy, and you're right, it is.
Yes.
It's messy.
Yes.
And giving room
Yeah.
for the messiness of life and character, and that because also I think it alludes to once you have done something to get labeled with poor character, that's just it. That's just who you are. And that is like, that's forever. As opposed to the messiness, because messiness also includes grace, and it includes restoration, and it includes a very like complex ability to still have good character without being perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Just want to get my 2 cents there and cause a giant like scene in the making.
I'm excited because I think you increased our YouTube followers like just now. Like like we're shifting from audio to video because of that moment, because people are like,
it was
I
going
want
to
to
hit
see.
the tea and it was going to spill. I mean, there were so many things that could have
The
happened.
stakes were high.
The stakes were high.
And you were like,
Ooh,
that was
with
great.
a paperclip in my hand.
Fidget spinner.
Go on.
So why? Okay, so we've got a working definition that we are agreeing on and moving forward with on our character. Why does it matter? Why does it matter? And I think I would just start with, I believe character matters more than talent, competency, or skill when it comes to following God. Like, and that's first and foremost. If you're going to integrate your Christian faith at the business, that is the starting point, like following God, being a follower of him. I think the Bible is full of examples of this. I think a wonderful, clear one in the Old Testament, Saul and David, right? Because Saul was defined as like the picture perfect example. He was a head taller than everybody else. He was handsome. He was talented. He had all these things. And yet David, who we have a litany of examples of falling short, making poor decisions, maybe not doing exactly what he should do, was a man after God's own heart, right? Had the posture to be one who had the character to follow God as God led him to. If we look at the disciples, I think this is another example where I often feel really encouraged about my own journey and kind of the mess of it when I look at the individuals who God called to be in his inner circle. And even like, let's remember that like Judas was one of his disciples that he called into his inner circle, and talk about just like the heartbreak and the complexity of that, but, and not the character in the end, because in the, these pieces and the heartbreak there, I talk about, there's this cool, and I am not a Greek scholar in any way, shape, or form, but I always love when this one's pointed out to me about in Acts. There's a verse, and I'm going to read it real quick, and then I'm going to give you the translation of one of the words. It says, it's Acts 4:13. Now, when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, because they're talking about Peter and John here, and perceived that they were uneducated, common men, they were astonished, and they recognized that they had been with Jesus. And the uneducated common men is translated from idiotes, which is where we get the word
smart people.
Idiot. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like that's literally the translation of what we're talking about here. So that's talking about intellect. That's talking about talent, smarts, what the world might view as mattering. They're like, this doesn't make sense, but it's because about following Jesus is about something else. And it was the character, the heart of Peter and John, right? The Spirit overflowing in them. And so I get encouraged when I see the women and the men that God in the Bible chose to display for us as those who had the character, the posture, the heart to follow him well. And so for you all, what are your thoughts on this principle of character over talent?
So I think it's really important, and I think it can be real tricky because as business owners and leaders, like we like to win.
Yes, please.
And so if you have someone on your team that's incredibly talented, that's helping your business win, can be really easy to turn an eye away from some of the character flaws.
Yeah.
And it's just tricky. And like we've already established that it's a little complicated.
Yeah.
But I think that just going back to like the character of who we're becoming and anyone we're leading and stewarding, the environment we're creating in our businesses, like we want to have an environment where people can flourish. And sometimes a really high performing team member could jeopardize an environment like that, but they're winning. So it's just, it can get messy.
It's kind of definition of what's winning.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
They're making your business money.
Yes.
And which they're putting points on the scoreboard. Maybe it's not even literal dollars in the door, but they're just performing in their role
Yeah.
and helping your business succeed
Yeah.
from a profit and loss point of view.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is the definition of success?
Yeah. What do you think, E?
I mean, I kind of already gave my 2 cents
Yeah.
earlier.
What are the
but-
next 2 cents?
Oh man,
So
4
3
cents?
3 and 4 cents.
I mean, I would just say that this episode, this tenant principle is really closely related to another one, to valuing people over profit. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, I would highly encourage you to go listen to that one too, because actually as we recorded that one, I thought of several things that maybe are more applicable here, but I think could go either way, sort of a thing. So I think that there's a lot of overlap with kind of to Michael's point and your point of what is success, and looking at what success looks like for your business and for you as a leader. Because if success is just dollars in the door, then I think to the other principle of like, then you're valuing profit over people, but also you might tend to value talent over character. If your win and your view of what success is just dollars in the bank account or whatever, insert thing, then I think, and I don't really think that anyone listening to this podcast is like, yes, that's my number one goal, is to just make as much money as possible and run over as many people as possible in the process. I don't think that. But I think it's easy to fall into those traps when you do feel like, oh, this is going well, or things maybe aren't going as you want. And so you're trying to find maybe the right person for a role. You're trying to maybe fill a role yourself or whatever that looks like. And I think it can be easy just to go for like, I might be skipping ahead a little bit here, but like, who's got the shiniest resume that looks like they have all their stuff together, and like,
Yeah.
you know, who looks the best outwardly.
Yep.
And I'm saving some of my thoughts.
Save
but-
them. Save them. You touched a really unique thing that isn't directly about character over talent principle, but you talked about some of the like intertwining or almost overlapping the connectedness between some of the principles. And I that has been one of the most fun parts for me as we've done this, is seeing how they weave together. And you just talked about it right there in a interview process. And we're going to move to practical applications out of this longer-winded segue. But I think applying patience in that place is how you like weave character over talent together with the principle of patience to work towards a hiring of the right candidate. Because what you're talking about in that moment is like, this person, like they could slay the dragon proverbially for our business. They might be the perfect resume candidate, but yet there's something there that I'm not positive about, but I just want to fill that role because we've got to get this role. We need a salesperson. We need an HR person. We need this admin, whatever it might be. And so you got to leverage patience to then weave together on the character over talent, because together those are what are going to actually allow you to fully bring your faith in the spot. So I don't know. I just thought that was fun as you talked about that piece. Okay, let's go practical. Let's talk about practical. What are areas that this applies? We've got some lists in front of us, but Michael, I'll let you go first. What do you think are some practical applications of character over talent in the business setting?
Yeah, it's been teased, so I'll just go for it. I mean, the hiring process is a great place, and it's just, what do you hire for? If you're only hiring on resume and competency, and there's no part of your process that is even vetting out the character of an individual, then you might be a little out of alignment on living this principle out. And so incorporating that as a filter, and even maybe having a deliberate round of interviews where you're just trying to get to know someone. And, you know, we talk about a failure resume. So it's like, instead of looking about all their accolades, it's kind of a cliche thing. I think it's become popular, but like, get them to tell you about how they failed or messed up. And what we talked about earlier, what you're looking for is, one, can they have the humility to acknowledge a failure? Because we've all failed. But most importantly, how did they respond from that? It's not that they failed. It's what was the response to that failure is what I would be looking for to tease out the character of someone through an interview process.
And recent. I just add practically too. So like, I ask you that question interview process and you give me a failure.
When I was a sophomore in high school.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And now you're 35. It's like, no, that's not that. Like, give me a recent one. Because it is hard in any interview process. It is hard to tether out somebody's character, right? Like, can you legitimately do that in the interview process?
No.
It's always going to be a risk.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're just taking their word for it, you know?
For sure.
So there's a risk, but there's
Can
things
you take
can
other
do.
people's word? Well, I say, what else can you do to try to not just take their word?
Sure. I mean, referrals, references,
Yeah.
I guess.
But fail your resume.
Fail your resume.
I think, and this is stealing some from, I think like a Patrick Lencioni book or something.
We
but
do that a little bit.
Yeah.
All citing and credit to you, Pat.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think as far as like what else can you do?
Yeah.
I think thinking outside the box on the interview process of, let's not just sit in a conference room and we fire questions at you and you answer. Thinking outside the box on, let's intentionally have some of our team members in like the waiting room when they show up and just on a more casual note be interacting with them. And then let's get those team members, input on what was your interaction with them like? Did they pay attention to what they perceive to maybe not be as important to people because those people aren't in the interview, which is not true. Or even like meeting offsite somewhere, seeing how they interact. I mean, I would say go to dinner. How do they treat their server? Like these are small things, and it's not necessarily going to give you all the insight as if you had spent your whole life with them. But I think it shows a little bit more into that. I mean, looking at someone's social media, I would say like that could get a little.
I think there's laws being made. It actually might be a very relevant subject for us to talk about in the future or something. But like, how can you use those resources that are available wisely?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think to Michael's point, just if we're sticking here for a second on the hiring, like I think a question that I try to ask myself is, who are we trying to hire? Not what are we trying to hire for? Because you're right. Like what we're trying to hire for is like, we need to fill this role. We need someone who can do this task. We need someone who can lead this department. But who are we trying to hire? Well, then that speaks to the culture and the DNA of our company. Like we are trying to hire a human who insert the things that are valuable to your company, who, values these types of things, who lives, in a way that honors God in this way, or who is family oriented, or whatever the things are that are of value to you and your company. Yeah. The who versus the what, because I think almost anything, maybe everything, can be taught.
You mean on skills? On
skills.
Yeah. Can you teach character?
I think that we can all learn to grow our character, but I don't think that that's necessarily our role as an employer. So I think that we should provide an environment that allows all of our employees to continue to grow who they are as people and their character, and as we do too as leaders. Yeah. But I don't think that we should expect that. That's why we're trying to vet that on the hiring process, right? Because, if you are someone who maybe doesn't have a perfect resume professionally or personally, but we believe in the type of person that you are, then we believe you'll fit here and you'll continue to grow alongside all of us as we grow. It's not our job to do that, but I think that we're all growing in our character, but I think skills can always be taught a lot more pragmatically than character.
Yeah. Any thoughts on all that?
If someone's not, you can't develop someone's character if they're like closed off to it. And to Aaron's point,
My
that's
character's
a bit
fine, Michael.
Right?
My character's fine.
That's a bit out of bounds in work where I can't come to Aaron and be like, hey, your character is kind of bad. We need to develop that. Whereas a skill for her role, that is within my jurisdiction to say, hey, Aaron, this skill for your role, that needs to grow for you to continue to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Because talent does matter. We're not saying it doesn't.
Totally. Yeah. But with the exception of deliberate, like lie, cheat, steal, like from my view, those would be some fireable offenses. Yeah. But outside of it being that black and white, like you just, it's how many times have we said this? It's just complicated.
Yeah. I would, so I would use the hiring process as a catalyst, another practical application. I think it can also look like, again, segueing off everything you said, it can literally be hiring people for roles that maybe they don't seem to fit, which is what you talked about.
I don't think we've ever done that here. So this is
do you have any examples?
Do
you have any examples, Aaron, of how you might? Could you potentially know anything about that? Or Michael, you might be able to talk about that, but we'll let Aaron go first.
No, I don't know. I think we both have. Well, the podcast you're listening to is a part of that. That was the first thought that I had. Michael, who had never run a podcast before.
True.
Accurate.
Helped launch this even like the iteration that was before the Restoration Group podcast. And I mean, but he still had that role, not because, and I'm putting words in your mouth now, but like, not because he came and was like, I've produced the most award-winning podcast that Apple has ever seen.
Correct.
It was because of who he was and his belief in the values and mission of this company and what we're setting out to do. And because you know that about him, and then he learned the skills. Thanks, YouTube. And then in a really fun twist of events, he taught me those skills or is still teaching me those skills so that I, who also have never run a podcast, can produce this.
Yeah.
Maybe make a comment below if you feel like the more recent episodes have been better produced. Just
Ooh, we could do a poll to see if they could guess where
they're
the
like,
transition
what does
was.
produce mean?
What is
That's
it?
what I didn't know.
So what one of the things I've heard like analogy is when you're really vetting out character, like you're just looking for the right people on the bus.
Yeah.
Once they're on the bus, we can figure out their seat.
Yeah.
That's
How many different, for an example, how long have you been on staff?
2.5 years.
How many different roles?
I mean, I think I've legit had 4 different titles that have represented different roles and responsibilities. I'd have to think harder to answer more specifically than that. But I mean, we're, and I think it's settled, I think, for now.
It is.
But I mean, we were every 6 months or so, my title was changing because my roles and responsibilities were shifting. And that's part of small business life. But I feel like our role in hiring is getting people with the right character to the best that we can discern on the bus that are bought in missionally, value alignment, and then we can move seats and train, to your point, different skills and find the right fit over time.
I also think that group of individuals can, from the outside, not just on the talent, it can honestly somewhat look like a motley crew that the world's lens of what a team should look like might not make sense. And I think Jesus's disciples are very much a model of this, where if you look at that group that he chose, they come from all walks of life, some education levels higher than others, some backgrounds shadier than others. And I just think like that is, I think, a part of what it could symptomatically look like externally. So that's another thing, because I think, again, character's about the response, like following God. And so I think you're going to look for people, again, failure resumes and maybe how they respond. And so the world looks and is like, you hired that person? And sometimes they're like, you work for that person? So now I'm talking about me, right? Like that's I think can be a characteristic of, or a practical application of this principle in play, right? Integrating faith.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, Michael. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, potentially as an application. What about the offboarding process? Honestly, like the moving people off your team process. Can you have any examples or practical ways of how this could be applied there?
Yeah, so we've said this. You can try to hire for this, but you're going to have misses. You can never know for sure. So there's going to be times where you bring someone into your organization and over time, it becomes evident that perhaps their character isn't in alignment. And there's kind of 2 different ways to look at this. One is like maybe they haven't matured in their character, but they are maturing. And so you can have some patience with that process. Or maybe you don't see the evidence of that journey happening and they are just a cancer to the team. And maybe they're incredibly talented, performing at a super high level, but are just destroying team culture. And I like sports because they're so binary. There's a winner and a loser.
It is nice.
It's everything's measurable.
It is
and,
nice.
And it just often makes a good metaphor.
Yeah.
And so Clay, I know you and I have this in common. Aaron, your husband, has gotten in on this recently as a hobby. We follow the Premier League. So the world football, also known as soccer.
Did you hear that accent? What's that?
It was terrible.
I don't know. Anyways, we like Manchester United, and Cristiano Ronaldo is one of the most talented people to ever play the game.
Yeah,
that's
if not
indisputable. If not the,
Yeah.
he has.
I hope he's listening to this episode. Do you guys think he is? You guys think Ronnie's
Definitely.
listening to this
Gotta be.
episode?
Absolutely.
Gotta be.
Yeah, we're
He
getting
hates that you call him Ronnie.
No, he loves it. He likes it. I know. So his role is to score goals, and objectively, he has scored goals better than anyone else in the history of the game.
Yep.
Right? He was most recently on Manchester United this active season.
Yep.
And was just a cancer to the organization. He was complaining about the coach, the owners, the infrastructure of the club. He was
leave
doing
games
this
early.
publicly. He would pout and leave games
Yep.
early.
Yep.
He was performing at a high level.
Yep.
But his character was such that he was putting himself above the team, which in a team sport is problematic.
Yeah.
And so without getting into the whole thing, he's not on the team anymore. And from my view, when that change happened, the performance of the team elevated. So you offboarded a high performing individual, and now you don't have his skills anymore, but the whole team actually got better.
Yeah.
And I think there's a correlation there.
Yeah. Aaron, where do you see this principle being a challenge for businesses? Like, so we're talking about this in the positive light and everything we're saying, right? Where could this be a challenge for businesses?
I think it's more typical that you would not see a return on your investment as quickly when you're valuing character over talent.
On the P&L specifically, like on the financial, or do you even mean it?
I think it could be a number of things.
Okay.
So I think that included, like,
Okay.
yeah, I think actual profit, maybe even like just positive, like maybe some more intangible team dynamics. I think that when you're looking to fill your team with character over talent, sometimes the road is longer. Like you said, you believe in someone, maybe you see something in them, but it's like we're not there yet, like they're not an all-star yet, but you believe that they will be. Or maybe it's even in the reshuffling of like, you believe in this person, you believe that they fit, and trying to find the right seat on the bus. And sometimes until you do, and maybe this goes back to the patience principle too, of like, I think that's one of the things that could be seen as a downfall, or one of the risks, if you will, is like, you're just not going to see a return as fast as like, okay, you go hire, Cristiano Ronaldo to be on your team, and like, you guys start winning games. I think that's the really tempting part, is like, for a little bit, that feels really good.
Yeah.
And
You bet it does.
Yeah, absolutely. You're winning games that maybe you weren't winning before.
Yeah.
But then over time, so I think it's the long game, and
Yeah.
that's what can be hard, is
Yeah.
that you're playing the long game. You're believing in people.
Yeah.
You're believing in more like intangible things that you can't quite put your finger on, or that like don't
Yeah.
show up on a resume, or don't always equal $1 in
Correct.
your bank
Yeah.
account.
Yeah.
Versus if you're just banking on pure talent and like execution, then like in the short term, that sometimes pans out better.
Yeah.
In the short term,
Yeah.
but in the long term, often is detrimental. And so you got to weigh that choice.
Yeah, we've seen that. We have tried to use this filter, right, at one of our companies, Habakkuk. There's been some competitive reps that we've talked to at other companies who had like a book of business that they've talked about bringing over, and it would have been fantastic in the spot. But this principle has led us to just not make that decision or not take that chance, because of the fact that it's like, wow, I don't know that it's worth it. And I'm afraid we'd be leaning towards the talent return piece over the character piece. And it's just keeping those in balance. So I think that was a great example that you talked about. Yeah. Okay. Any final thoughts from you two?
That's all I have to say about that.
That's it. Aaron?
I mean, I can't think of anything better than when Michael said he likes sports because they're binary, and then he talks about a sport where you can literally have a draw. Just saying. There's not a win or a loss in a draw.
So good. Thank you
wanna
for
point that
that.
out.
That's and I'm going to use that segue to go to the finish. Oh, I've got a Dallas Willard quote to close us out, from binary to draw to Dallas Willard. There's this quote I love. The most important thing in life is not what you do, but who you become. And I think that's what we're talking. It's the heart of what we're talking about right here. And then that Acts 4:13 verse is what we're going to close with. Now, when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were uneducated, common men, they were astonished, and they recognized they had been with Jesus. Until next week, choose life. Thanks for tuning into our show. If you want to learn more about how you can integrate your faith into your business, download our integrated business guide for free by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.